it's Bob Goff here. Welcome to the writing room. And we've got Jessica Patay on with us. And she has been somebody that came to one of our writers' workshops a couple years ago. And she's just ended up publishing a terrific book. It's an anthology. It's called Becoming Brave Together. And I just want to welcome you, Jessica. I think Kim is going to join us in a second, but welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Bob. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful to be here.
Give us just a quick taste of your adventure as an author. Had you written books before, or is this your first cannonball in, grab your knees and go?
Yes, this is the first. I definitely had been writing and blogging before, but this is the first book.
Yeah, the thing that I thought would be really interesting for some of the people listening to us is to hear from somebody who started the process from like a jump start. Welcome, Kimberly. Good to see you.
Hello.
And
Hello.
we were just talking about this process of starting a book and jumping in because a lot of people that listen to the podcast haven't done that yet. They're considering it. We call it pre-contemplation. They haven't grabbed their knees and done the cannonball. What was a little your backstory that got you to the point to say, hey, listen, I have something to say and I'm going to say it?
Great question. Thank you for asking that. I think because I'm all about supporting my fellow caregiving moms, I really wanted to give them a voice. I've been using my voice for quite some time, but I wanted to give other moms an opportunity to share their story. And so that's why I thought first about doing an anthology before sharing my own story in a solo book. And I thought, we have so many moms that are a part of my nonprofit organization. Surely we will find enough stories among this community. And so I really wanted to give voice. And also, I know that when you only have one person in your life that might have a child with a disability or medical complexity, it's very easy for our psyche to just kind of minimize the extreme caregiving that goes on. And I thought, well, this is a book that will display 22 stories. It will be a balance of the hope and the hard. And it's a book that will certainly validate fellow caregivers, but it's a book that we can share with family and friends to really understand, get a deeper glimpse into what our caregiving life is all about.
Yeah, and give people listening just a brief overview of some of the headwinds that you faced as a mom and the challenges that were like really kind of the impetus for writing this.
Thank you. So I am a mom to three, and I say Ryan, my second son, is the one who made me a caregiver. He was born with a rare genetic disorder called Prader-Willi syndrome. And there's no short answer, short explanation, but lots of things are affected in the early years. You're very much focused on gross motor, fine motor, and speech. He didn't walk till he was 3. He had a feeding tube his first year. And then later on, there's this really unusual symptom that hits in childhood. It's called hyperphagia, and it's food-seeking behavior because kids and adults with the syndrome don't have any satiety signals. Their brain and their body don't tell them that they're full. And so everyone ends up usually with a locked kitchen to protect their child or adult because they don't have any self-regulation when it comes to food. So our story, thankfully, Ryan we say his food drive was a slow burn, so we didn't lock our kitchen until he was 13. I thought I'd be locking the kitchen up when he was 5, but it wasn't until he was 13. And then by the time he was 16, we had to become extremely vigilant. Like, don't ever, ever, ever leave something unlocked, even for a second, to walk away. So he has a lot of anxiety and behaviors. PWS is definitely a spectrum. So some kids are more affected than others cognitively, academically, physically, medically. Ryan is going to be 21. And this is definitely a book that I wish I would have had in the early years because I would have felt so seen and understood.
Yeah. So think about for you who are listening to write the book you needed and that didn't have access to. And this is a great example, an anthology to find 22 other authors to offer theirs, and then you are the conductor of the symphony. Kim, tell us about the thoughts that you have on an anthology versus a solo project. And what I've been doing is trying to talk Jessica into for her next projects to continue to use this method of getting many voices, but then also work on a solo book. So tell us your thoughts.
I just love the opportunities with both of those genres. I'm super excited, Jessica, that you did this. We got to meet a while ago and the wheels were still spinning and the ideas were still percolating. And it's fun to see how you've landed on this project. As you mentioned, giving voice to lots of different authors is a lovely thing for the reader. I mean, we saw, for example, the Chicken Soup books were all anthologies and they sold like hotcakes. There's something to be said for having a bunch of voices in that space. For the reader, I think sometimes, and you were mentioning, Jessica, that you wrote into the gap that you needed filled when you were younger. And so I think sometimes for people entering into the conversation, maybe for the first time, having a variety of people speaking can be kind of a soft roll, right? A little on-ramp. But to Bob's point, I think we also need solo voices. I mean, you've established yourself as an expert and trusted voice in this space. And so I think people would absolutely come alongside and listen to you for a full 60,000 words. I think the question is really what Jessica said, which is look at your reader, look at what they need and how you can fill that need. And so there are lots of different ways to go about it. And it sounds like this is a good space for your reader. And both of these things, right? Holding both of those things. And I think they'll want to hear more from you as well. So as you, listener, are thinking about what genre to pick or how to format what you're doing, paying attention to how your reader will read the book is super important. We talk a lot about this at the Oaks, how, for young moms in particular, if you have babies, the chances of you sitting down for a luxurious bubble bath, bonbon enriched 6 hours with a book are exactly zero. So paying attention to that means shorter chapters, percussive sentences, lots of sticky takeaways that, I can read a paragraph at a time and get back to the mac and cheese. There's just paying attention to how our readers will interact with what we are writing it makes you 5 laps around the track from the very beginning. And Jessica, you've done that.
Thank you.
You're the conductor of the orchestra, Jessica, and I was curious about your thoughts about how did you collate the different thoughts from these many different voices so that we weren't all over the map?
Well, first of all, I hired a publishing group, the Unknown Publishers Club, because I knew this was not a project that I could manage on my own. And I enlisted the help of 2 people from my We Are Brave Together team who are far better editors than I am. I'm a writer, but I don't consider myself an editor. What I knew I wanted was a variety of diagnoses represented, a variety of ages of children represented, and some different writing styles. And so that was kind of where we began. We put the call out and asked for stories, samples, writing samples, and then our publisher took all of those and then brought it down to a smaller amount. And then we went through every story.
Nice. So I think the value of this is for future writers or ones that are in the middle of this. Think of this other concept, which is an anthology. You're the conductor of the orchestra. You decide how broad or narrow it's going to be. It can start as you introduce many voices. You start kind of like going a very so broad that you might lose someone's interest because they have a very narrow thing, but you also cast a broad net. So that is the trick in pulling an anthology off. And so my challenge to Jessica is to just continue to work on these, to be a voice for many other people on a platform and do a solo project. So it was like, I like Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, but I like their solo work better. So continue to do the great harmony of voices and thoughts and idea that's really rich. Tell us about your nonprofit.
Thank you. So We Are Brave Together launched in 2017 with the mission to really preserve and protect the mental health of caregiving moms. So we say you're a caregiving mom if you have a child any age with literally any diagnosis or disability or mental health struggle. And so what we offer are support groups all over the country, which we call connection circles. And we have low cost retreats to give moms a weekend off. And we have scholarships for those retreats. And then along the way, we started a podcast. And then we've just published our first anthology.
Awesome.
We've grown to over 2,600 moms
Wow.
internationally. It's just the need is there. Moms
Yeah.
need to know that they are not alone. They need resources. They need permission to take care of themselves and their mental health, especially if they're the primary caregiver. And so we are just trying to offer all things inspirational, practical, and resourceful to these brave moms.
Wow.
Yeah, and I'll underscore that for those of you that have an interest in doing some nonprofit work. I wrote a book called Love Does, and then there's a nonprofit by the same name. It doesn't have to mirror the same name, but to let people know you're out there, a resource that can be a really good thing. It's not like a fundraising tool, but it ends up being a great way for people to get the vibe of what you're about. Kim, I'm going to give you the last word today. What do you think about this idea? Isn't this great that Jessica did this?
It's so awesome.
Oh,
I love it
Proud of you.
because we've gotten to see a little bit of a front row seat all along the way. So Jessica, we're so proud of you, super excited, not just for you and for this dream that you're realizing, but also for all the many moms in particular that you're going to help with this book and with the great work of your nonprofit. I'd say to everybody listening, you heard it from the source. You heard it from Jessica. There's probably a book that you wish you had. Probably a book that when you look back on particularly a rough season in your life, I would guess, man, you went to Barnes and Noble and nobody could help you. My guess is you have a book in you that will help a lot of people. So get out of your own way, start writing. Do as Jessica said. She said she's not an editor, she's a writer. Find the people who can fill in the gaps for you and get this thing on paper. It's time. You've got your permission. You don't need mine. Go get after it.
You guys, you've been listening to the Writing Room. Jessica, thank you. Thanks for your book. Thanks for the next one that's coming as you're collecting your news stories. And then for that solo project that I know is going to come your way. And for everybody listening, just be encouraged that there's just so many different ways to get your words released in the world and some of your ideas. And with fostering kids was your jam, then maybe some foster kids stories of other people that have been doing that. But I love how you're taking this and then becoming brave together, wedding them together, and then just increasing the impact in the world. All right, you guys, go out there and get this thing done. We'll talk to you next week.